attendance and behaviour. So yeah, as Chris just said, we'll be taking you through quality assurance of behaviour and attendance. Quick introduction. My name's Mark Unwin. I'm the CEO, the very proud CEO of Create Partnership Trust, and also the founder of AskKira.com, the UK's first and best AI education assistant. And periodically you can find me on Twitter at Mr. Unwin, not at the moment because I'm having a social media break, but normally. And if you want to contact us, you can do that through EvaluateEd, or you can just email me directly. Chris, do you want to introduce yourself? I'm sure you need very little introduction, but you might as well.
So, well, I'm Chris Dyson. I'm one of two deputy CEOs at the Create Partnership. Sort of my remit is all school-based, which is teaching and learning, assessment, SEN, behaviour, attendance, and all the things that happen within a school. And our other brilliant deputy CEO is Kieran Vitale, who's responsible for finance, HR, sites, and other such things. So, and I was lucky enough that I joined the trust in January last year. A really exciting sort of change, because I could have just sat quite happily as a head teacher at Parklands Primary School up in Leeds, but because I still felt energetic and I still felt lots of energy, I'd done practically 10 years at Parklands, and then this opportunity came where instead of working with 350 children, I had the opportunity to work with almost 3,000 children across 4 different schools. So as you can imagine, the schools are huge in comparisons to other schools. We've got 2 schools, Hodge Hill and Greet, who both have in excess of 800 pupils. And it's been an absolute wonderful first 12 months. As we'll allude to today, everything that we do is not, and we repeat, it's not for Ofsted. Okay, Ofsted's a very tentative sort of subject at the moment. But we have been fortunate enough that in March this time last year, we managed to move one of our schools, Brookfield, from an inadequate grade to a good grade. And then likewise in July, we were successfully moving Hodge Hill from being an RI school into a good school. And that for us was quite significant, because it was a gamble moving to Create from lovely Leeds, where we were only sitting on 1 good school and 3 that were in categories. So that made us as a trust vulnerable to be swamped by or be taken over or merged, however you want to put it, with one of the sort of bigger trusts. But now, after a year, we're proud that we're sitting on 3 good grades, and with only 1 school now that's at RI, which you could even argue is the strongest out of the 4. So that's sort of my background. So back over to lovely Mark.
Okay, so just so you sort of got a bit of background, really, I suppose, as to where the information is coming from in the presentation. So between Chris and myself, we've been fortunate enough to lead schools in London, close to Manchester Airport, Liverpool, Stoke, Birmingham, and Leeds. And we also do an awful lot of school improvement work in the sort of southeast London, sort of Kent area as well. So if you're running a coastal school, hopefully this might inform the work that you're doing. And similarly, just as Chris has said there, an awful lot of Ofsted work, particularly since March 2022. Neither Chris and I are inspectors, but really informed by what 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, sort of 7 or 8 inspections in a really short period of time in various capacities, and that's led to a real focus on quality assurance and how quality assurance can work, and not quality assurance as part of an Ofsted framework, but I think Chris or I would probably both say that the quality assurance work that you're going to see here led us and our head teachers to feel very confident when going into the Ofsted inspections. And I believe very strongly in not doing anything for Ofsted, but equally, I also think that if you can go into an Ofsted inspection feeling confident, then I think that's a positive thing for everybody involved. So we'll take you through why we quality assure behaviour and attendance, how we do it, and how we report on quality assurance to, in our case, to directors on the trust board, but it would be just as relevant for head teachers reporting to their governing bodies. So looking at why we quality assure, well, and so very personal to our trust, we have a trust value of aspiration. So we have trust values of innovation, of collaboration, and most importantly of integrity at all times. But our fourth trust value is a trust value of aspiration, because our children and our families trust us to have very high aspirations for their achievement, for their behaviour, for their attendance, and we take that really seriously. So that's the first reason. Second reason is for reasons of risk management. Now, we talk about risk management all the time. It's not something until I was in the executive team of a trust I'd ever really given any serious thought to before, and maybe I won't in the future. An awful lot of the job of the executive team of a multi-academy trust is managing risk on behalf of the trust board, and presenting the trust board with enough information to make strategic decisions and to understand where risk exists within the trust. And traditionally, risk might have been seen in terms of finance, it might have been seen in terms of health and safety, it might have been seen in terms of safeguarding, and it is those things for sure. But increasingly, we see risk management to include the achievement of pupils within the trust, teaching and learning that takes place within the trust, the behaviour of pupils within the trust, and the attendance of pupils within the trust. And that's because each of those areas, safeguarding, achievement, teaching and learning, attendance, behaviour, the curriculum, each of those areas can have a significant detrimental impact to the school in the event of a less than positive Ofsted inspection. And in the current state of education, it's not one I agree with, but in the current state of education, the biggest single risk to a multi-academy trust or to a school or to a head teacher, CEO or anybody else is a less than favourable Ofsted rating that we know. So we quality assure in advance of Ofsted in order that we can feel confident in Ofsted, and we quality assure to manage the risk of that for our directors or for our governors. And leading on from that, if we do good quality assurance at school level, if we do good quality assurance at trust level, then that means that we can report effectively to our governors, and we can report effectively to our directors, and we can report with certainty, and they can make decisions, strategic decisions on the back of that reporting. And the final reason that we quality assure is to be subjective. And I've long believed that the best form of quality assurance is subjective quality assurance, which is really transparent, which is open to all the stakeholders involved, so that everybody knows what's expected, and people can use quality assurance as a form of positive validation that they're doing a good job within their school, and as a way of identifying areas for further coaching and development. Why we don't quality assure as part of our appraisal cycle. So to try and reduce the threat from quality assurance, we don't make that link. So similar to Mary Myatt's idea of high challenge and low threat, we see quality assurance as a regular, little and often process, mainly of positive validation, and also of coaching and development, and therefore it wouldn't be appropriate to put it within an appraisal cycle, which would be judgmental. We don't quality assure to not only grade teaching and learning with a capital G, as in, to do observations and grade, but we don't use it as a way of even creating informal gradings. And I know some schools and trusts still have, and some governing bodies and directors still expect that triangulation between teaching and learning, books and work in the classroom and data to arrive at a judgment on a holistic judgment on the performance of a member of staff or on the performance of a school. We don't do that, and we don't use quality assurance in that way. And that's fine if that's what that governing body or those trusts want, but that was not the case for ourselves. We certainly don't quality assure as a mockstead. Now, when you look through the documents in a little while, and Chris takes you through the individual documents, in the column where we make it clear where we expect to see evidence of various things to do with behaviour and attendance. Sometimes that involves going for a walk around the school, as you would expect, because you're not going to be able to adequately quality assure transitions, for instance, which I think is question 5 on the behaviour document. You wouldn't be able to quality assure transitions without going and having a look at some transitions. But it's really, really important that everybody understands, and all our the people involved understand, that that's not in some way that you know, as a sort of mockstead walk the school, or there's some judgment being made as a result of that. And most importantly, we don't quality assure objectively. This isn't opinion based, or as much as possible it's not opinion based, as much as possible it's not schools having to copy Parklands, for instance, or any of the schools that I've led, or the practices. It's, as Chris said before, to make it as subjective as possible, so that teachers and most importantly head teachers can build the school that they want to build, whether it be aligned with Tom Bennett's practices or Paul Dix's practices, or something completely different that's appropriate for the unique setting of each school. And I think quality assurance that's built subjectively can be a really positive force for good, and quality assurance that's objective can be the exact opposite of that. So Chris will take you through most of these documents, just so you understand. So looking at behaviour to start with, and then I'm going to leave it to him. Each of our areas that we quality assure, so that's safeguarding and achievement, teaching and learning, which Chris outlined in our webinar recently, attendance, behaviour, curriculum, which I went through in a webinar 2 webinars ago, which is available on the website, and in all the operational areas as well. We've broken down into 15 questions to ask the lead in that subject. So if we're talking to the safeguarding, are we talking about the quality assurance of safeguarding? Then Chris would be talking to the designated safeguarding lead. If we're talking about the quality assurance of finance, then Kieran would be talking to the school business manager. If myself or our business partner for curriculum was talking about the quality assurance of curriculum, they would be talking to the person in the school responsible for curriculum. And each of our schools has somebody responsible for curriculum, either a deputy head or an assistant head responsible for curriculum development. So the first column are questions to ask the behaviour lead in this case, and there's always 15 of those questions, and Chris will take you through the reasons for that. And then in the column headline documents and or practice, each of our quality assurance sheets has an indication of where we will see the evidence, the positive evidence that these questions can be answered in. So it's policies, it's places on CPOMs, it's in training logs in question 3 there, or it's by walking around the school. So question 5, you can see that it's in walking around the school, and then similarly there's down the bottom there's some other opportunities to go and walk around the school to quality assure behaviour. So I'm going to let Chris take you through the rest of it and the detail of it. And as he said before, we also produce model answers or likely answers, so that we can be really transparent with the schools within the trust and externally by giving them the questions they'll be asked, the documents they need to prepare to have a successful outcome to those questions, and the likely answers or the possible answers that they might be giving, so they can coach and be even better prepared. And I think in that way, schools within trust feel that it's a supportive process rather than something that's being done to them. Okay, Chris, I'll hand over to you.
Thanks, Mark. So as we said, we've generated 15 of these questions in each particular area. And today we're actually looking at behaviour and attendance. These documents are all in Word, so you use them how best you want to use them for your school. We use a lot of things from the DFE guidance and from the EEF and all such things to formulate our questions. But however, whatever you want to drill down into your school, then as I said, you can make these into your own and things. So everything's in Word for you just to copy and paste. So the basis, as I said, is I use these sheets. Mark as CEO uses them. Head teachers could use them. Subject leaders such as the curriculum champion can use them. And the feedback that I've had this half term, so we do these sheets every half term. They take around about 90 minutes to 2 hours to complete. But the feedback from staff is it empowers them. You know, we've already given them sort of some rough outlines of the documents and the practice that we want to see, whether it's something on CPOMs, whether it's case studies and other such things. And that really was a benefit for the school. So it's not a fear factor that when we come in, it's working together. Looking again, as our trust really promotes, is the sort of coaching model, producing future leaders, producing the confidence we want our leaders to have. So when we're just looking down sort of these 15 questions, we're looking at DFE guidance, we're looking at the quality of CPD. So if we're doing a big push on behaviour, what behaviour training have we had? And again, it makes no difference whether it's Paul Dix, whether it's Tom Bennett, whether it's something totally different. It's make sure we've got that continuity, that what's happening in one year 3 class is happening the same as the other year 3 class, and what's happening in those year 3 classes is the same as what's happening in year 6 and the same as what's happening in year 1 and things. We know now that schools are very much teamwork, and everyone's got to be sort of invested in this, as we'll really allude to when we come on to the attendance pages. But we're looking at the roles that the teaching assistants or the learning supports have, the site staff. Do they intervene if they see children sprinting down the corridor on a transition between lunchtime and such? What quality training have they had? So therefore, we're really looking at it being a sort of team effort. The student voice, okay, listening to how the pupils perceive behaviour in their school, how the pupils perceive what makes a good lesson, what makes good behaviour, whether it be in the lesson time, whether it's walking from A to B, whether it's how they behave at lunchtime, break times, on school visits, on school trips, in school sport events, and other such things. And again, it's bringing awareness to the leaders of how are the parents being involved. Do we have parent workshops? Do we have parent coffee mornings where we pick up on things? One thing that I really like to see when I'm being a national leader of education, working in other schools apart from Create around the country, is I like to look at the behaviour policy and see just a couple of simple lines that school council have made about behaviour. Also, a couple of lines about what parents think about behaviour, and they might be taken from your parent questionnaires and such. So that's basically the way in which we formulate our 15 questions. And as I said, on the right-hand column, we will have some documents or some good practice that we'll want to see. Before then, we give a rating, and I'll explain those sort of rating later on. As I said, time is everything. It's not a case of just going in and rushing through all these quality assurance exercises in half an hour, covering 5 different areas. We want to take the time, we want to develop the leaders, we want to develop the staff, make sure we're incorporating the head teacher, the senior leaders in the feedback of what we've found. And then most significantly, what we'd like to see on our return visit in half a term's time and things. So if we go to the next slide, please, sort of now, Mark.
I really am having computer nightmares now. Just 1 second. Oh, there you go. Perfect.
Lovely. And then, as I said, for that extra sort of support for staff, because of course it's not all the time I'm going to be speaking to the head of school. It's not going to be all the time. I'm speaking to the deputy for behaviour, attendance, safeguarding. It could well be a learning mentor. and it may be someone who's not used to being put into that spotlight. So what I tend to do is for all 15 questions, but I don't give them this until I've seen how they produce the evidence on the first time. If they're totally stuck on something, I can refer back to this and say, these are some prompts that you might want to use next time and things. And I said, that's where the empowerment comes and the sort of trust that makes it effective leadership and things. So for each of the 15 questions, there's a question, which you've just seen, and then particular answers that we want to see. Because if we look at the first one, the DFE guidance, there isn't one set way the DFE wants to see behaviour in schools. You may be sat in rows, you may be sat in the horseshoe, you may be sat in groups. But what we want to see, the DFE wants to see, and what we all want to see in our lessons is, are the children behaving? Because if they're behaving, they're learning. If you get behaviour right in your school, and I think we're blessed that in all the schools I've ever sort of worked in, the behaviour across all 4 of our schools is exceptional, and therefore you're already on the road to excellence. Because if you've got your behaviour spot on, it naturally means you've got more chance to develop your teaching and learning, because you're not always stopping, being disrupted and things. So for the high achievers, that's absolutely essential in things. So it's giving particular answers to each of the questions. So if you go on to the next slide, please now, Mark. So that's the answers to sort of number 6 and 10. And again, all these documents are on, will be on Evaluate Ed for you to, and again, all in Word, so you can change and make them into your own. And then the final 5 questions. So we've got the comprehensive answer booklet there, which we can share with leaders and other such things. So I'll go on to how we give the sort of scoring after I've just briefly looked at attendance. So if we click onto the next slide, I think we're going onto the attendance now. And again, the same ethos where we've got 15 questions, we've got the documents and the good practice and the case studies and other such things that we need to see. Again, we wanted to make sure that it's following the DFE guidance, because obviously at the moment, attendance is a really hot topic. Whether you liked the recent January DFE attendance, sort of, I was going to say propaganda, but it's not propaganda, the sort of way in which they were pushing their attendance. And it is so important now. But one thing when we're looking down here is working with external agencies. And I'd advise anybody, if they can, to sort of link up and follow someone called Wayne Harris from @Inclusive Attendance. That's @Inclusive Attendance, who's done lots of work, not just with the attendance leaders in school, but has done a lot of work with the whole staff in school. And one thing that Wayne really does exceptionally well is he gives you the sort of narrative. We know, as I said, that attendance is significantly behind pre-COVID sort of levels, and that the government and the DFE and everybody wants to see that attendance return back to the levels that we'd seen before COVID-19. At primary level, our attendance is significantly higher than high school attendance, for whatever reason that is. In fact, it was funny looking at some data, looking at the absentee rates, predominantly in high schools, on a Friday, because with a lot of people working from home during the pandemic and beyond, a lot of people still work at home on a Friday. So there's some correlation there between parents working at home on a Friday and then children deciding that they're going to stay at home on a Friday and things. What Wayne does, as I said, though, is he'll get a narrative for you to explain to governors, to explain to directors why the attendance is at a particular point. Okay. And because one of the little tips that I always give, sort of mine, our sort of 4 schools in the trust, is that we have a predominantly 80–90% Muslim sort of community in schools, where a lot of families have extended holidays in September. So these children may not be returning to school until October, which means they've missed the entire month of September in school, which then means that even if they get 100% for the rest of the year, they've gone past that magical 19 days, which makes them a persistent absentee for the year. So what we try and develop our sort of schools to do is to run 2 lists. Okay, this is a list of children that are already PA because of an extended holiday, and we're not talking about going to Tenerife for 2 weeks, or going to Centre Parks for a cheaper holiday for whatever reason and things. We're looking at these children are already persistent absences because they didn't come back in the country until October the 3rd or October the 4th. So those children, we have them on that list. We know the PAs, but there's not a lot we can do about them because they've had an extended holiday. So it's looking at that second significant set of persistent absentee children and looking at trends in there. So it may be that you've got some children that are consistently having Wednesdays and Fridays. Well, let's not use Friday. We've used that example. They may be having Monday and Wednesdays off school. And you see that pattern emerging when you're looking at analysing the data. And then when you drill down, they may be having that Monday and that Wednesday off school because that might be the day when it's swimming or it's games or it's PE. So it's again looking for those trends and things. As a father myself of a 19-year-old, a 15-year-old, and a lovely 7-year-old, my 15-year-old, her worst days at school was when it was PE, when she had to get changed in front of people, when it was swimming for the same. Whereas my 19-year-old and my 7-year-old who were really, that were their best days. So if you looked at their sort of data over the year, they were pretty much 100% every Wednesday and every Monday and things. So it's analysing and getting to understand that data and things. So as I said, I'll put in the chat when I finish speaking the Twitter handle of @inclusiveattendance with Wayne Harris, who, as I said, has been instrumental in getting our narrative, working with staff. And one thing that we adore and love working with Wayne is pure and simply because he's got an accredited CPD attendance scheme now, which is for the whole school to do, whether or not you're the head, the deputy, the attendance lead, a learning mentor, but for learning support staff to be using. And it's a series of 6 modules, but that automatically rings alarm bells for some people thinking, 6 modules, you don't want to be doing an hour and a half over 6 times and things. But these modules are simple, quick, easy fix, 15-minute sessions, which what we allow our schools to do is say, right, every Friday, let your key stage 1 learning supports do a module. And then when they come back into class after 15 minutes, we'll release some year 3 and 4. Then we'll release some year 5 and 6. So it makes it high profile, and it allows the entire school to be on that attendance journey and things. So, and when we're looking at the actual external partnership work and things, and working with Wayne, I know that there'll be lots of schools on this chat as we actually speak, whose data is below national and whose PAs are below national or higher than national. So, but it's about the journey. It's about the impact that you've had over the previous year. As I've said, if you've got 20 children that are classed as PA in October, okay, then your back's up against the wall at the start. So it's important to have that narrative and that story behind. So we look at the action plans that all the schools have done. We look at how often they're reviewing their data. We're looking at who sees that data. Is it just the attendance person speaking to the head, or is it the entire SLT? Are we bringing it up in staff meetings and training for staff? Are staff aware of who their best attendees are? How we celebrate in attendance? But by looking, so in our schools, we are generally speaking below national, not significantly below national, but around about that 93.5, 93.8% mark, which is below last week, which I think was 94.5 at primary level. And then we're looking at the persistent absences, and then we're looking at what we've done on that action plan throughout the year. But then by going back 12 months, we can actually compare and we can measure the impact of the actions that we've actually just done. So it was very pleasing in one of my schools last week that we saw that their attendance, even though it was still below national, it was actually 3.25% higher than this time last year. Persistent absence had fallen from 34% to 21%, So still 4% higher than the sort of national figures. But the impact of what the school and the staff had done over the previous 12 months had seen attendance improve by over 3% and persistent absences fall by 9% and things. So, and it's having the confidence to showcase the numbers you want to show, and it's all about impact. Everything's to do with impact and things. So again, we've got these 15 sort of questions. And then if you go to the next slide, Mark, again, just like we saw in the behavior, we've got potential answers. So if it's an experienced attendance lead, if it's an experienced attendance team, you've got little things that you could pick up on next time, because one of the big things that's come out at the moment is, yep, the DfE have said, even if you've got a little sniffle, get yourself into school. But at the same time, we've got to understand that where we're working in the West Midlands, there's been an absolute huge measles outbreak. So it's balancing what Public Health England recommend with, what the DfE is saying is get your children into school. And as I said, Public Health England always out trump anything when it comes to that and things. So again, there's answers down the first 5. I know Mark's just clicked his video off, but hopefully he'll put the next slide on, which will then look at those questions 6 to 10. And then finally, we can have a look at the questions from 11 to 15. So we've worked through this with the staff. As I said, for you guys sitting on this call, you can decide to delete question 11 and 13 and put something that you found bespoke to your school in there. And that's absolutely brilliant and things. So we've got this information now. Now it's a case of how do we report this to our trustees, our governors, our local authority, school improvement advisor that comes in. So if you click to the next one, please, Mark. And again, this spreadsheet is on Excel, and it will be on the Evaluate Ed website for you to use and things. And then what we've got on here is, this is just a screenshot of it, but we have school 1, school 2, school 3, school 4, school 5. So we've got, for the trustees and the governors, we've got all the schools on one easy document. At the bottom, where it's actually not taken on the picture, there's a tab for finance, there's a tab for HR, there's a tab for estates, and then there's one for safeguarding, assessment, teaching and learning, curriculum, SEN, behaviour and attendance. So there's 10 tabs on the bottom there, and then the trustees can just click on and then have a look at school by school sort of comparison. Now, this sheet doesn't go out to all the schools. We're not creating a competitive trust where we don't want to say, well done, school 1, you're this week's attendance champion. School 4, what are you doing about it and things? So we put those scores in there. And then just a quick summary of what we do. If you just go back, please. Sorry, Mark. So you've seen that the questions that we've gone through and the sort of policies, if question 1 is fully embedded, and this is all dummy data, by the way. Okay, so if question 1 is fully embedded and, ticks every box that we want to see, the confident answers, case studies are provided, CPOM examples are provided, parent workshops have been evidenced and other such things, they score a 1. Okay, if they are partially in place, but there are some things that they're missing for next time, then they will score a 0.5. And then if something like there's never been a parent workshop, parents haven't a clue what the behaviour or the attendance policy is in, so we know that that's going to have to be actioned, then that will score a 0. So we've got a set of scores let's have a look at autumn 1. And then what we do with that, and the Excel spreadsheet does it for you, so you don't even have to find a calculator, it multiplies the total by 6.7. And the reason why it multiplies it by 6.7 is that if there are 15 answers divided by 100 for 100%, gives you 6.7 weighting for each question. So the governors then could see a percentage at the bottom And if the percentage is 90% or above, then that's basically saying to the trustees, saying to your board of governors, saying to your local authority school improvement advisor that there's very little risk to the trust, very little risk to the trust, to the school, and other such things. If it's got a 70 to 89% overall rating, it means there are some risk to the schools and therefore the trust, but mitigation is minimizing it. So basically, we know that we're sitting in between the 70 and 89, but these are the actions we've put in place to make sure that we're on the right path and that path to excellence and things. Consequently, if there's a risk rating of between 50 and 69%, then it allows us as leaders to utilize our resources to give extra support to those areas, because between 50 and 69%, there is a risk. Okay, so if behaviour or attendance or teacher and learning on January the 22nd was coming out at around about 50%, we know that there needs to be urgent input from ourselves, from external partners, to address that situation, which then the school's aware of. And then, of course, it gives us a chance then in 6 weeks' time, because the advantage of only having 4 schools in a trust, irrespective of the size, means that each school can have 2 days bespoke support every half term, which then leaves these 10 days on the 5th and 6th week to really put that extra support in that we've highlighted on these sort of documents just here and things. So again, though, for a trustee, for governors, that just gives you a data output. Okay, it just gives you a random percentage number at the bottom, whether it's 92%, whether it's 85%. So what we then do for our trustees, or for you guys to do for your governors and things, we then produce a quality assurance report. And the quality assurance report is across those 10 areas that we've said: finance, HR, estates, assessment, teaching and learning, SEN, safeguarding, attendance, behaviour, and one that I missed. So now we give them this executive summary, which gives specific sort of summary of what is happening across the trust. And again, this is all sort of dummy data in there. It gives the sort of attendance summary. It'll give a PA summary and such. Just so, again, the trustees have got that information at their sort of fingertips. And then you'll notice on the second side there where it says appendices, you'll see there's on this one, there's appendix 12 all the way down to round about 19. That is where all the detail comes. Now, we're all aware that governors, trustees are all on unpaid positions. They're volunteers. It's pretty hard at the moment to get, governors, trustees, with everything that's sort of going on. So basically, we don't want to drown them in paperwork. So when we have a trustee meeting, and I was to blame for this at the start, I was giving them too much information. So it meant before a trustee meeting or a board meeting, they may have had 200 sheets of paper to look through. And when you're a volunteer, you've got a family at home, you've got your full-time job and other such things, you might not have time to give 200 pages due diligence. You may have the time to really drill down into those. So we found by putting the appendices on for the trustees, if they wanted to dive deeper, then they could. So as I said, we've got 10 quality assurance reports across all the 10 areas. We summarize onto this report. And then if you go on to the final one now, please, Mark. And then each school in all the 10 areas also get their own personalized. They get their own personalized sort of notes, where it's got the risk notes down on the right-hand side, which may be something that I'm picking up on straight away next time. So I might want to see a case study. You've told me all these brilliant things. That's perfect. I want next time I come in, I want you to evidence it by pulling out a CPOMS report, looking at a vulnerable child and the impact of the work the learning mentors had upon them. So again, if you go to the final slide sort of now, please, Mark, before we go to lovely questions. So again, we're giving on this final appendice to the trustees and the governors, the specific detail for that school. Okay, so it might be how many fixed term exclusions, it may be, you know, how many cases are related to race, to gender, to disability, to homophobic behavior, to religion. It may be on child-on-child issues, it may be on sexual violence and other such things. So again, it's giving the trustees, if they so choose, or if they've got questions in those meetings, we've got those answers to appease them and to justify why they've got a certain sort of percentage sort of risk. So as I said, that's sort of covering attendance and behaviour. And remember, today's sort of sessions wasn't about how to get that attendance, how to get your attendance up 95% plus, to get your PAs down to 17%. It wasn't about how to get behaviour perfect in your sort of schools. This is pure and simply a tool to quality assess what it is the schools are doing day in and day out and such and things. So, and I said, everything's on Word, everything will be on the Evaluate Ed sort of website. And I'll take a pause from reading, from some reading and presenting now, to go to any questions that Phil's got. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks so much, Chris. We did have a question, which was about, in relation to attendance, what do your parent workshops look like?
So again, parent workshops, and I always look at this because we know that the parents that attend the parents' workshops are the children whose attendance are round about 95% plus and things. So, but the parents' workshops is about them coming into school. If we have a general parent workshop, it's about coffee morning, the importance of being in education. You know, if you were sitting on 90% attendance, that means you're having round about over 20 school days missed a year, and then equating what that's like over a year's time and other such things. But it's getting the parents into the school that are the ones that you need to see. Now, it may be, and again, this is where compassion comes with attendance. The areas of Birmingham where we serve, you know, have lots of parents that have suffered domestic violence, so they may have been moved up from London up to Birmingham, and then they may be in temporary accommodation, and then the temporary accommodation may move from close to the school to 6 miles away. Okay, and then if you've got the young children, it's about how to get them into school, because they may need 2 buses, and of course you can't send primary school to children at 5 years old, just put them on the bus and tell them to get off at a certain stop and come into school and things. And it may be having the compassion there, working with the parents to see how best you can get them in, or at least providing a laptop so learning can be ongoing whilst they're waiting for another school place and things. And it's about having good relationship with the parents. So when we know we've got children attending with lower than 90% of parents, we're speaking with the parents, we're inviting them into school. We're not inviting them in a sort of threatening, telling off kind of way, because we need to know the circumstances. Why aren't they attending? And I said, that's when you're drilling down into your attendance figures. Is it because they've got to get changed at swimming and things on a Monday, so therefore it's easier not to come in because they don't want to go and get changed in front of people? And it's about finding those sort of solutions, but it's about getting them into school and talking and finding the sort of route to their problems and things.
Great, thanks, Chris. I thought I was still muted then. We had a couple of messages just saying how useful it was, and it was fantastic. And it's clear how you take a whole view of the school, so it's not just like one number, one target, one approach. That for each individual child, you've got that individual approach, but you've also got that way of reporting to governors as well, and to your trust board too. So really, really useful. If there's any more questions, feel free to drop them into the chat box. As Chris mentioned earlier, we do have a similar approach evaluated. I have put the link for a free trial, seeing as you've been part of our webinar tonight, into the chat box. couple of details to fill in there, and we can give you a free trial looking at that. But Chris, thanks so much. You look like a newsreader now, Chris. Tapping your papers there.
Well, I think just going back to Ed Evaluate, I mean, one of the reasons Mark had this great idea to sort of do it sort of this way is because it naturally fed. If you're using the Evaluate Ed sort of school improvement tool, you know, this is a sort of evidence that you can, when you've made your judgment and you've said where you want to be going and what your priorities are, how you're going to measure the impact. Well, it's these lovely sheets just here. So it fits. It does two birds with one stone, as it were, and things. So, and you know, for well-being wise, and for I used to spend a good 4 or 5 weeks working on a Seth. I'd do all the groundwork for it, then I'd revisit it, and then I'd make the tweaks, then I'd have to sort of cut it down from 28 sides to a more manageable amount, then I'd have to run it through all my sort of senior staff and governors and other such things. But then when we found the Evaluate Ed, in fact, lovely Tanya at Greek Primary said the best new invention that she's had since she's been the head at Greek for the last 6 years has been the impact of using the school improvement tool and the self-evaluation tool that you guys have, because it just it slashed her workload and things. And because other people can use the shared access, it meant that everyone was working on the document at the same time. So bit of a clap for you there.
Brilliant. Thanks, Chris. Well, I'm not going to add anything else to that because that's perfect, but really useful. Again, if you'd like a free trial, the link's in there. Chris, Mark, thanks so much. I'm getting to know your box room really well from these webinars. All the other webinars are on our website, so evaluate-ed.com. So you can see them all on there. There's a great series of them that you can use whenever you would like to and share them with your senior teams. And Chris, just finally, thanks so much. And thanks to Mark as well. Thanks to everybody who's joined too. We've had one of our biggest audiences tonight as well. And
4th of March, 3:30 is the next one on safeguarding and SEN. And then Tuesday, the 19th of March is finance, HR and estates.
Yes. Is there anything more exciting than that? So,
exactly.
No, but it's those sort of things that keep you awake at night, isn't it, as a school leader? So really useful as well. So thanks very much, Chris. Thanks for everybody for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again next time.
Take care, guys. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Bye-bye.